All right, folks, tonight we're going to kind of just review what we've been through and take questions. So as you're thinking about that, maybe you've had some burning questions concerning all this stuff that you've been wanting to ask or discuss, and we will take those as I go through the different things. So feel free to discuss, bring up some ideas, questions, whatever you might have, and I will, we can talk about them. So, matter of fact, if we don't have some decent discussion and question, we're going to get out very early, probably. So I am going to review and just go through this process again. But let's pray before we do that. Father, as we think about finances, in many ways, we wish we just could ignore this whole issue and just go on about our lives. But we know that money is part of life, and no matter how much we want to walk with you, we still have to pay our bills and plan for the future. And that's something you knew about and something you've given us direction on. And we can do wise planning and hopefully do well with the finances you give us. We can also be generous givers to the work of yours around the world. So, Lord, the finances can give us those privileges. So we pray for these things as we talk about, again, a review tonight and then any questions that people might have. So we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so if you've been coming to the class, a lot of this stuff is, like I said, this is peer review. Going to back up to where we began. Some of you have been with us from the beginning. I really wish others that have been coming would, some of the younger families and stuff that should have been here, in my opinion, who have already asked me since this about finances. And I said, I just went through a whole class on finances, and you didn't come to a single one. And But that happens on a regular basis. But this material, I think, it's all on our website, our somewhere out there with the classes we're teaching. So I think it's all been recorded. So you can go back and look at some of it if you want to. So let's look at the process here. So I like this quote by MacArthur. I think it's pretty accurate. In a sense, money is a good barometer of your spirituality, because the way you handle your money is an indication of your performance as a Christian steward. So I think that's a pretty good thing, because we're looking at the biblical, as Christians, and how we handle our money is differently than how other people might handle their money. So we're not living just for the finances or the things we can buy. We're looking at handling money in a way that God wants us to, and it is a barometer. It shows us what is important to us, how we see God in our lives as we handle our money. So I think to a very large extent we can examine our priorities and our love for the Lord, our desire to serve Him by how we use the finances the Lord gives us. So if we're doing things financially just like everybody else is, then probably we're off base. There should be a biblical parameter of all that we're doing in our finances. So MacArthur's dead on with this particular quote, in my opinion. The purpose of this course will be, or it has been now, threefold. Three things we try to do. Number one, to teach biblical and practical principles of handling finances. Again, going back to the original, I have found that many believers who might have very good education, they've got degrees from colleges, they're very good in their field of whatever they do in the work world, don't have much of a clue when it comes to how to handle money. And sometimes that's because they've never been taught that at home. They grew up in an environment where it didn't matter, and many times they simply just haven't looked at it. They just simply paid the bills as they came in, and they took care of things as it went along, and they didn't really pay any attention to what was going on in their finances. And a lot of times they get caught in that, and that's why we want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. Secondly, we want to give an opportunity to apply these principles. So we've given out all sorts of worksheets to you. You can get those from us if you need them. Things that if you actually took them home and went through them, that has to do with Sunday school this morning, I think.
No, I was in here teaching. This is fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
To me.
Is that what you want to get?
I guess.
You might need that.
I'll look at it.
You might need that. Read that during his time. But give an opportunity. This gives you an opportunity to apply the principles. So we have budget worksheets. We have how much life insurance worksheets you got. gathering data for setting up goals and objectives, all those kinds of things. So if you've taken advantage of that, you've gone home and actually worked through those, that would be something that I think would be very valuable to you, and that's what you should do. I will get to it in a minute, but towards the end of this class series, we went through retirement and planning for the future as you get older, and I handed out booklets that I got from Vanceville Funeral Home. I used them all up, so I don't have any left for you. I was going to get some more, but I actually went downtown this week to get some. So I went downtown and stopped at another funeral home, and they didn't have any. He looked at me like I was weird. So I was headed over to Vanceville's on South Grand, and one of those endless trains went through, and I thought I was going to be there for 5 years, waiting for the train to go through. So I headed back down 6th Street, and I got 6th Street blocked off all 3-4 lanes. It took me 45 minutes to get nothing, so I got nothing for you. I'll probably get some later, but you can go to the Vanceville's funeral home and ask for them. What they are these little booklets. They're not very big, but they're very valuable to have if you pass away, for your family and your loved ones to know where all your details are, where they can find your bank accounts, your password numbers. Can you imagine, if you pass away and you got 30 password numbers that nobody knows what they are? Just think of the problems your loved ones will have to figure that out. A lot more complicated than in the good old days. And so you got, where's your will? If you have a will, and you should have a will. Most of you should have a will. And so all these kinds of things. Where can you find this stuff? How can, if you and your spouse, if you're married, passed away at the same time, who is going to be able to find all that stuff? So these little booklets, you write it out, and you let your loved one know where it is, and then they can find everything through that little booklet. So I'm partly telling you this story on top of the fact I couldn't get any more, is I started looking for my own copy and couldn't find it. So Marcia and I are headed off to Canada on Thursday, and we're going to be flying and so forth. So what if we both died on this trip? If we die in Canada, Trump may not even let us come back. I don't know. It's getting kind of iffy these days. But so I couldn't find it anywhere. So I scrounged up one that I had, and I was going to work on it. And then we looked in our safe once again, and we found that we'd done it in a different booklet. It's a much bigger booklet, by the way. It's about that big, and also every piece of information you could ever want, is in that little thing. And so I wrote out this little one that I found. I put that in a place that's not in the safe, so that could basically tell you the other stuff is in the safe. So I got a little fireproof safe. I recommend everybody have something like that, or at least a fireproof box of some kind, so that if you don't lose everything. Or if you have a box at the bank, if you want to do that. But everybody ought to have your very important papers in a place that are not going to get burned up or easily stolen, and your loved ones can find that. Because Marcia and I went through this with Marcia's parents when they died. A number of you have gone through that kind of thing as well. When a loved one, parents or whatever, die and all the information is scattered, and you have no idea how to get a hold of it, it is a nightmare. It took Marcia and I literally years to untangle her parents' stuff, and we don't know if we ever did it right anyway. It took actually literally 10 years to come to the end of that. So that was not the happiest time of our life. So that's what these booklet type of things are for. So this is the kind of information I've given you. I hope you've taken advantage of it. Let your loved one know where this kind of information is and how they can get a hold of it. Your passwords, you need to have your passwords somewhere so that somebody can find out how to get into your accounts and so forth. Otherwise, this is going to be a nightmare for your loved ones. And that's the goal of that kind of planning ahead. Okay, so give you an opportunity to apply those kinds of things, to put a booklet like that together, put it in a safe place, and then encourage you to take control of your finances now. So once again, most people don't have control of their finances. Their finances have control of them, and whatever happens, happens. Some people luck out and do pretty well, especially if they work for some company that has a pension, which is going away for the most part, unless you're with government, or they have something where 401k at work, that they're taking money out of your checkbook, out of your check every week, sticking it away for you, and you don't even know what's going on half the time. A lot of these people don't, and yet by God's grace, it builds up, and you might have a nice little nest egg one day. But if you don't know that, you don't know that, and so it's very important that you find out these things and not let things just happen to you. Okay, so that you have a pretty good handle. You don't have to become a financial expert on all these things, but you ought to at least have a working knowledge of all the things that we've worked on together here. And again, like I said, I'm going through a review of all that we've done for the last 12 sessions together, and I'm looking for questions and discussion. And on your part, if you have anything at all that you want to go through as we go through these things, just jump in there. Raise your hand or whatever, and we will see what we can do. So, anything so far? Okay, we'll get down to it a little bit further. So here is the financial planning process. So this is what we've tried to get you to do, and giving you information and worksheets to do it. And if you haven't done it so far, you can do this on your own or get these worksheets. But first of all, you need to gather personal and financial data. So go through all your financial paperwork, your bank accounts, anything you might have at work, anything you've got saved somewhere, and make sure what you've got is here. So get that data together, and just sitting down with a worksheet that goes through that to see what your net worth is, how much, what are you worth, what do you owe, what do you have saved, and have all that information in one location. Usually you can do that on 1 or 2 sheets of paper. This isn't a big volume thing. You can have the summary of all that on a couple sheets of paper and have that available. And then when somebody asks you where you are on that, or if you decide to work with a financial help planner of some kind, all that information is there with you and for you and to help you. So you start with that. Then you establish financial goals and objectives. So what do you want to accomplish financially with your life in the going forward? So what goals do you have in front of you? And that's going to be determined largely by your place in life, your age, your situation in life. So if you're young, your financial goals, we're talking about the bigger pictures, might be get a college education. It might be to purchase a house or a car. It might be smaller items that maybe you have a house, but you don't have the appliances you need. So you got the short-term goals, the long-term goals. Some of these are small, some of these are large. And then, of course, if you're older, let's say your kids are through school and whatnot, your next big thing probably is dealing with retirement. So what is your goal there? What are you going to need in retirement? How do you know how much you're going to need? What resources do you have? So all that needs to be thought out and looked at and examined carefully so you're not caught off guard with those kinds of things. So what is your goals? Short term, mid-term, long term. Okay. So I think everybody ought to start planning for retirement very early. The sooner the better. But at the same time, we do know that if you're 25 years old, just had your first kid, and you're thinking now you got bigger goals in front of you in the short term, such as where you're going to live and education for that kid and so forth, and those other children you might have. So you may not start working in earnest for your retirement plan till you're 50 years old. And most savings for retirement are usually actually in the 50s and 60s is where the majority comes. Now you should start early, the sooner the better, but you're going to have more disposable money at that stage in life, hopefully, to plow into the future when you get up there. But you got these goals to look at. So what are your goals? And sit down with your spouse, talk about what you're looking at in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. The next step would be to process and analyze the information. So you need to actually look at what is out there, what you have. We'll look at some particulars in a minute and go through all that. See what is there, get the numbers, lay it all out, and analyze that information. Is this, as I look at my goals from 10 years from now, do I have the resources? Do I look like I'm going to have the resources that are going to be able to accomplish those goals? So we were talking just before most of you came in, 3 or 4 of us were talking about college education for kids and what it's costing to go to college. And I think Mike said, I haven't saved enough. Okay, that's probably true, you know, or at least you start looking at big numbers, it is costly. So what's your plan there? What are you trying to do to accomplish at least a good hunk of that? It's very hard to keep up with inflation right now, with especially education, other things like that. But at least you need to know what, and you come up to the stage where your kids are going to college, and you have no concept of what it's going to cost. That's not the time to figure it out. You need to have a head start on that. The next thing is to develop a comprehensive financial plan. So what is your plan? What's your future? What kind of plan do you want to put together? And then implement the plan, put it to work. So it doesn't do you any good to say, I want to put X number of dollars in my retirement account, X number of dollars in my children's college education fund, and whatever else that might be, if you don't actually do it. So a lot of times people will go through these kinds of courses like this. By the way, a lot of financial planners, a lot of salesmen of one kind or another, insurance or estate planning or whatever else, have seminars that you can go to. And so I've gone to a few of those, mainly because they often give me a free dinner. And those, as long as you're able to take that information and not be pressured into doing something you don't want to do, it's not a bad idea. Most of the ones I've gone to have been helpful. You know, they give you information you need to know, and just as long as it's not a high pressure thing that you feel like you have to do something with them or they start bugging you. I've gone to 2 recently that one was financial group, another was estate planning, and both of them were helpful, informative, but that neither one have pressured me to do anything. So those are good ones to look at. And I could tell you some of those. And you could talk to somebody individually as well. And then monitor the plan. So once it's in place, you need to go over it periodically. See is it doing what you want it to do? Is it accomplishing the goals that you have? Do you need to adjust your plan somehow? And this should be done, I would say, at least once a year. So at least once a year, sit down with these worksheets you have, and your money and your investments and whatever else. Sit down and look at all of this, and see, is this doing what I hoped it would do? And if not, what adjustments should I make to my plan going forward? Or can I make adjustments? Or perhaps my expectations are too high? So if you listen to Dave Ramsey, for example, who has a lot of good advice, the numbers he often gives and how much money you can expect to make in the stock market is pretty aggressive. You know, and so I'm not sure you can make that kind of money, but maybe you can. But look at that. I don't know what he's saying recently. I don't know if it's 12% or 15%. What is anybody follow him enough to know what he's saying these days?
I thought he used to say 11%.
Did he?
But that was a while ago.
Okay. So, you know, if you look at your stuff and you say, well, he's telling me 11 or 12%, but I'm making 4%, then you might want to take a look at that and see where you are and what we're talking about. And of course, remember, and I mentioned this, I think maybe our last time, we've been talking recently, a month or so ago, we're talking about putting money in investments, mutual funds in particular, and other things like that. And the stock market itself has returned 10, 11% over the long haul per year. That's a historic average. Okay, so you can maybe long-term expect something like that or something close if you're in the right funds. So that's a good thing to look at. But that is a long-term average. That is not what you're going to get day by day or year by year even. So since that time we're talking about the time we were talking about, the stock market was doing quite well. And matter of fact, last year was I think, quite a bit above the 12%. This year it's lost money. You know, if you're in the average index fund, which is mirroring the market, you're losing money. I'm not sure the exact percent, but 4 or 5% down. And for a while, it was down at some of the indexes were down 20%. Well, which is the official term for bear market. The bear market correction is 20%. NASDAQ, the the index was down that much. The other indexes are very close. They've bounced back some now, but this isn't altogether bad. I was kind of glad in a weird sort of way it happened. You need to see that the market is up and down. You're not going to be able to always get the average. Okay, and on top of that, that also tells you, and I've said this earlier, in these kind of investments, don't be putting money into the stock market that's expecting this 12% return if you're going to need a hunk of money next year. You know, you should have, I think, at least a 5-year outlook for your money in the stock market, because if you're looking for this year or next year, it simply may not happen. Bear markets often go a couple years, and so you could lose a hunk of change for a while. Back in the Great Recession, 2008 and 9, stock market in many places went down 40%. Many people lost 40% of their portfolio if they were of what they had in the stock market. That's a lot of money. Okay, so if you are banking on having a bunch of money for something 2 years out, you're hurting. Okay, so be careful with that. Long term, that bounced back as well. If you kept your money in the stock market, it bounced back many times over since that time, but you had to keep it there and you had to have a long-term parameter. So stock market is not a short-term investment. It's a long-term investment. It's a good long-term investment. It beats virtually everything else if you have the right stock markets, mutual funds and stuff, but that's long-term. Any thoughts on that?
And how about feeling not so bad, I guess, bad but not so bad when the market's down. If you're still buying, that's an excellent time to buy.
If you can.
If you can, if you got dry powder. So.
Yeah. If you don't need that money anytime soon, you got some extra money, and the best way is to make money when everybody's running away. But that might take a while to come back. Yeah. Most people don't do that because most of us are chicken. You know, we like it when it's going up, when it's going down, we run for the hills. That's why most people don't make money in the stock market. Many people will take their money out at the very wrong time and lock in their losses. And then the ones that actually make money long term are like the Warren Buffetts of the world, who buy when everybody else is selling, hang on, they do well.
Just a week or so ago, he had, maybe it's 2 weeks ago, he had an interview where he said, well, I think, because they're talking about everybody selling off, and he said, I think some people just weren't made to buy stocks. They don't have the intestinal fortitude or something like that. I know, I just looked at Tesla, and over 3 months, it's dropped 28%. But over 6 months, it's up still, even with that loss, it's still up 8.5%.
Okay.
So if you're, like you said, if you're in a longer view, it's still okay. And then, of course, over 5 years, it's up something ridiculous, like 500% or 400%.
Yeah.
Or something
So if
crazy.
you got in early on,
Right.
you're in good shape, yeah. With that in mind, so I might hit this in a minute too, but I would mention, unless you are willing to put in a lot of time to study different funds like or organizations like Tesla, don't buy individual stocks. Individual stocks are much riskier because you have a Tesla who has gone way up, and now if you got into Tesla 6 months ago, you've lost a lot of money. But if you're in the index funds and so forth, that balances out. So you can make more money with an individual fund stock if you hit the right one, but you can also lose it too. Kim?
I think Tesla, to me, is a good example. They make $1.74 a share on the money put in there. Their PE ratio is 163.76.
Yeah.
That means it takes 163.76 years for you to make back the money
Yeah.
that you put in it. So to me,
Yeah.
it's not a good investment.
Yeah, and the reason why people buy stocks like that, they have these astronomical PEs or what they're returning on the investment, is because they're thinking things are going to eventually get really good. And so we got a starter company here, basically, that's going to one day just blow the doors off. Apple did that, Amazon did that, these different ones have done that. But, again, you're taking the risk.
So your point is analyze the stock. Just because it's going up and everybody's buying it doesn't mean it's a good buy.
That's right. And because the person at a barber shop told you to buy it, doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're doing, right? Actually, though, I've got a really good book written by a barber. Uh, I might still have a copy in there. It's a Barber's Guide to Finances. So it's a kind of a joke book in
Isn't
a
it the
sense.
wealthy barbers?
It's a
What we're
wealthy
talking about?
barber, yeah. And it actually is wonderful investment advice, but it's, I'm not sure the guy was really a barber, it was just a story. But it's a very good little book, but anyway, so I'm gonna move on. The most important financial principle, here it is, spend less than you earn and do it for a long time and you'll be financially successful. So you can't hardly beat that. It's pretty simple, isn't it? So figure out a way not to spend all your money. So I was watching last night, there's a documentary on Burt Reynolds. Remember him? Burt Reynolds was the most famous person in the world, the most famous actor by far for several years. He made an absolute fortune, and he spent every bit of it. He went through every dime he ever had. At the end of his life, they had to sell off all of his property, everything he ever owned, to pay off his debts. I'm not sure he ever paid it off. He probably made $1 billion in a lifetime and spent it all. He had no concept of what it meant to not spend it all. No matter who talked to him or tried to talk him out of it, his wife or whatever, didn't matter. He spent it. Don't be a Burt Reynolds, okay? Get your money. Don't plan ahead, though you don't spend it all. Put it in a good investment, and you will be financially successful in the long haul. Okay, we also talked about a budget, and that's a dirty word for a lot of people, but it's just a systematic plan for managing your money during a given time period. And again, you should rework your budget probably every year, see what you got. The more realistic it is, the easier it will be for you to follow. So in other words, don't sit down and say, I'm going to spend $200 a month for groceries for our house sold, when you know down deep you're going to spend $5. Okay, so be realistic. You know, I'm not going to go on a vacation for 5 years to save money. That's probably not going to happen. You know, so be realistic. And a budget will help you take control of your finances to ensure enjoyment of the things you value most. So what you got in the budget, you got certain things you have to spend money on, and so you have to have that in your budget. But there's other things where hopefully you come at the end of the budget, you got money left over that you can put in places that will enable you to do the things you want to do with your life, with your finances. So we worked through a budget. We gave you worksheets on how to make up a budget. Some of you might have, I don't know, or some of the people that aren't here tonight might have went through that budget and found out they were actually spending more than they were making. So I have done that with several people over the years where they came in struggling financially, sat down with a budget sheet. What are you spending on mortgage? What are you spending on utilities? What are you spending on insurance? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, all your expenses, realistic expenses down. Over here, what is your income? And found that on more than one occasion, several occasions, they simply weren't bringing in enough to pay for the bills. And here's the key, they did not know it. So the one that stands out the most to me, and this is 25 years ago, was a $700 difference between what they were bringing in and what they were spending. And they were both college-educated people, very sharp people, who did not know and could not understand why they couldn't pay their bills. That's the financial situation of many people. So that's why we need to have a budget, and we really need to know what's going in and what's going out. And when we find out that we need to make adjustments, we can make those adjustments if necessary. Any questions on budget or things like that, or thoughts? Okay, I've already given this principle. I'm going to give it again. Spend less than you earn and do it for a long time, and you'll be financially successful. So how can we do that? Let's take a look at this. Well, it all came up at once here. Number one, pay yourself first. So, and we're talking now about how to save. How to save. Most people will never be able to save if you are going to, after you pay all your bills and all the stuff you want to do, you're going to take whatever's left over and you're going to save it. You'll find that you'll never have anything left over. That's typical. So you've got to go through a budget, make sure you have the income. And at the end of the day, if your budget says I've got $200 a month that discretionary money, I've got some money to do something with, you take that money and you pay yourself first. You put it in the bank account or your investments or whatever. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you can put that money away, but you do it first. You do it the first thing. You either do it the first thing every month, or you have it automatically removed from your account every month so that you don't have to make that decision. And probably one of the easiest things to do here is if you're with a company that has a 401k, just let them take that money right out. It's painless. You don't even know it's gone. And that'll really build up in the long term. And if you can't do that, do it yourself. Jim?
As believers, I'm going to make a bullet point above that one.
Okay,
I'm going to encourage us to give heartily unto the Lord first.
that's true.
And the reason I say that is I think what happens, especially when we're younger, is that everything else seems to be a necessity. The house, the car, the food, all that, right? And we'll spend whatever we need to do that. And then sometimes we don't have enough to give to the church. And so I would encourage you to know what you want to give to the Lord and then appropriate your life after that.
Yeah, in another session, we did exactly that, but I appreciate that. That's absolutely true. You will not have money to give to the Lord's work if you wait till we pay everything off and then decide, well, I got $20 left over. I'll throw it in an offering plate. That's not gonna honor Him. Especially when we think about the teachings of Scripture about generosity and giving. I don't believe the tithing system is for today, but at the same time, you have maybe a standard there. And historically, even those that don't press tithing have thought 10% is a good number. John Wesley, for example, said, give 10%, save 10%, and do whatever you want to with the rest. But 10%, and that's not a bad starting place. Much talk as Christians do about tithing, according to the surveys, very, 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 very few Christians actually give 10%. And I think that's kind of atrocious, especially for those that could give if they weren't buying other things and doing other things. So we might have to cut back on our lifestyle to some degree, but I agree 100% with Jim. We need to determine, I determine, Marcia and I, every year how much we're planning to give on a systematic monthly basis. And then throughout the year, we might give other monies to other causes. But our numbers is set out the first of the year, and that money it goes into the offering every month. We do it monthly. Some people do it weekly, whatever you want to do. But we know exactly our plan there, and I encourage you to do that. So thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. Okay, and then as you pay yourself first, as you put this money into savings, we'll look at where to put that in a minute. This money should be untouchable until you reach the goal you're putting the money away for. That make sense? So you're putting money in a certain pocket, and because later on you've got a goal for that money. Maybe it's saving for a car or a house or whatever, but you're not going to touch that money until you're ready to accomplish that goal. So it's untouchable. You don't go pilfering from it. And we'll see how to do that in a minute, not do that. Make use of the magic of compounding. We showed that to you several times. The magic of compounding is exactly that. If you let your money compound, then the money starts building on itself, and it builds on itself, and it just kind of keeps on rolling. And one time, I think Kim looked it up the other day on when we were here about what Buffett's investment rate was overall. And it was, because of compounding, it was like, what, 1,000,000% or something? Several million percentage. And that's because it just keeps, so you saved $100, but that $100 is now being compounding, and you do that for long periods of time. It's just the way to go.
And in his annual report, he compared it to the S&P 500, and the S&P 500 did great.
Yeah.
Did great. But he was so far beyond that.
Yeah.
It's unfathomable how that can get done.
Yeah.
But that's compounding.
Yeah, it's compounding. It's something we need to, how can we do that? Well, first of all, we have to save some money. Got to put some money away, then we give it time. We put it in a good place, good investment place, find a good rate of return. So you're looking at something that's going to give you a good rate of return. So we've encouraged the mutual fund route in the stock market because over time, it has returned 10% or more yearly for 100 years. Probably not going to change unless the world changes. But you keep in mind, we can only do the best we can do. If the Lord decides he's going to collapse this world and we go into, America falls apart, which it could happen, then okay. We put that in the Lord's hand, he's in charge. But in the meanwhile, we should do the best we can, right? And over long periods of time, it's done well. If you need to adjust your lifestyle, do so. So if, again, we showed, and some of these financial people like Buffett will tell, if you're buying $4 lattes every day and going out for lunch for $10 or $15 a pop every day, most people don't think that's a big deal. But you add that up and see how much it's costing you to go out, have coffee at Starbucks. I think I read the other day a cup of coffee at home, it costs you 12 cents. You make your own coffee, 12 cents. Starbucks, what is it, $3 or $4, depending on what you're getting? Not that high? Huh?
7 to 9, depending what you get.
Is it really? See, you can tell I don't go to Starbucks much.
No, that would be like some kind of fancy drink. Just
It's a
a regular coffee is like $3, isn't it? I don't ever get the fancy. I don't ever get that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the funny thing, Starbucks was founded in the midst of a recession when people were struggling financially, and they started selling very fancy, very expensive coffee, and people gobbled it up. It's amazing. Bob,
Yeah, the medium size is $2.56.
for a cup of coffee?
Yeah, and you save the cup, use it the next day, it's $1 for a refill.
For how many times will they do that?
And as you can keep the cup together.
Oh, really?
I managed
Bob is
17
clearly
times.
working.
17 times, that's your record? All right. Okay, so if you're a Starbucks connoisseur, there you have got it from the horse's mouth right there. All right. Okay. But kind of like a couple of people said, most people go to get the fancy stuff. They want the fancy stuff. But anyway, so you can adjust your lifestyle. I mean, it's always fun to eat out once in a while, but man, that can get extremely expensive for most people. Realign your assets. So if you got things that you can sell, get rid of. Facebook Marketplace is a wonderful thing. It beats garage sales. So you can actually put something on there and sell it for a reasonable price. Garage sale, you're selling your $100 bike for $2. You're not making much money at a garage sale. To us, we never do it. It's more work than it is for the money. The $20 we make, it just isn't worth it. But there's the marketplace, different one. You can sell stuff. You can put it online. Get rid of things you don't need, and put it somewhere. Okay, get rid of debt. Number one, before you actually start investing, get rid of debt. Credit card debt, number one. As soon as you can get rid of any kind of credit card debt, do so. If you use credit cards, which all of us have to do at times, pay it off at the end of the month. Don't let that accumulate because they're going to charge you 21% or more to service that debt. And it's hard to get out of that once you get into that. Consumer debt are things like buying cars and getting loans from the bank, or buying appliances with those deals 6 months, same as cash. Then you forget to pay it off. They charge you 25%. That's a bad choice. If you're going to do that, make sure you know when that is up. So, consumer debt, mortgage debt. That's a better. Each of these debts are a little better. Mortgage debt is a necessity for most people. It's a rare person who just walks out and buys a house with cash. And I just again on the news just recently, with the prices of houses and the tight market we're in, the average person who's now buying their first house is moving into the late 30s. Okay, that's amazing. You're in late 30s, but buy your first house because the market has been so tight, things have gone up so much that most people can't do it. Now, quite frankly, Spring Patch has a lot of problems in a lot of ways here, but buying a house here is cheaper than almost any place you can go. So if you have to leave Springfield to go somewhere else, you're going to be shocked at what you got to pay for the same kind of price house almost anywhere. So the best thing is stay in your house if you got one. And also, if you're a first-time buyer, there's incredible incentives that the government gives you. I've heard from $10,000 to $15,000 that are given to you by the government. What's the number now? Anybody know? I know recently some people in the church have bought houses. Somebody told me you got $15,000 for that. It's at least 10. You got to stay in the house 5 years. But if you're a first-time buyer, that's a great deal. So Springfield's a pretty good place to buy a house, and people around here younger are able to buy houses for that reason, I believe. But anyway, mortgage debt can be acceptable. Investment, educational, business debt, depending on what you're looking at, it can be a debt worth having. But at the same time, be very careful. So we haven't talked about these kind of things, and I don't think you want to know about it even. But you can buy stocks on what they call margin. That means you're borrowing money from the stockbroker to buy your stocks. I'm not sure what the margin is now. Do you know, Jim, what they charge on that?
As far as interest,
No, how much? Yeah. How much do you have to have down to buy a stock?
it's kind of a crazy formula.
Yeah.
Essentially what it is that if you have some ownership of stock, and let's say you had 100,000 of stock, they'll essentially let you borrow that, but if the market starts getting a little bit wonky, they call it a margin call, they wanna get some of that back, because they don't wanna lose their shirt. And
Right.
if you go insolvent, they're essentially letting you borrow money from them.
Yeah.
So, and there's some interest on all this stuff. For most people, margin is not the way.
That's right. You're taking a real chance, because if your stock really tanked like Tesla's done recently, and you had margin call, they could call that, and you have to pay all that money that you borrowed from them back, and you may not have it.
And they don't ask you when you wanna pay, it's due that day.
Yeah. So we really haven't talked about this before, because none of you really should be doing that. And I've personally have stayed away from anything like that all my life. That's a good way to lose everything. Those kinds of things.
Calls and puts and options are another one that some people think, oh, that sounds really fancy and fun. Most people lose their shirt.
Yeah.
Just because they don't understand it.
And day traders the same way. If you heard of those, most of those people are not making money. They're having a lot of fun, but they're not making money. So just do the normal stuff, okay? Okay, so let's talk about investments for a minute. So how are we going to do that? First of all, eliminate all credit card and consumer debt. Get your debt out of the way. Don't start investing a bunch of money until you get rid of these kinds of debts. That's just number one. Number two, set up an emergency fund. So this is very unhappy. People don't like that, So I can't get my money invested right away. No, you need an emergency fund first. An emergency fund is there for you when something really goes wrong with your life financially, and you need to get on some money in a hurry. So let's say you have a car transmission fall out, and so you got to buy a new transmission. And how are you going to pay for that? Well, if you don't have some funds set aside, you're going to have to borrow. And if you borrow, you're going to have to pay interest. And now you're back in debt. Okay, so an emergency fund is that fund, your own personal fund, set aside to pay for those emergencies that show up. Things that could happen, like the transmission, or it could be health issues. It could be any number of things. You need to look at your life and see what could happen, what could reasonably happen in the next 2 years that I'm going to have to fund. If you buy a house, and the house, you're in good shape right there, but your roof is 25 years old, guess what's going to happen soon? And a roof costs $15,000 or whatever. Do you have the money to pay for that? If you don't, you got to go in debt. So emergency fund is money set aside to pay for emergencies. You may never touch it. That's great. But it's there if you need it. It's a cushion. How much do you need? Well, we recommend a minimum of 3 months living wages. What you normally spend in a 3-month period to live. So you have to have your budget first. How much do you spend a month? You should have at least 3 months of that accumulated in an emergency fund. So if your budget is your living expense is $5,000 a month, you need about a $15,000 emergency fund, and that's minimum. Many recommend a 6-month emergency fund, but at least a 3-month. And so that $15,000 is not fund. You got it in a bank account or whatever, not making you a lot of money, but you got it there when you need it. Highly important. Then set up separate accounts for major purchases if possible. So let's say you want to buy a car in 3 years. Start putting away a little money, bit by bit, for those things that we know are going to come up. Brian mentioned in the sermon this morning about doing our HVACs here at the church, having to replace a bunch of them. If you look at our budget that we give you at the annual report, we're putting away money every month, $2,000 a month, here at the church to replace HVACs or repair them. Okay, so that's just, and so right now we've got We got enough to replace one. We got about $24,000 in the account right now. A couple of years ago, we did a bunch of stuff, and we're just now digging out of that. But we've been saving money. Do the same thing for church vans. We put away X number of dollars every month. I think it's $250 a month or whatever for a church van. We just bought another van recently. So over time, we've got that money to help us with that. Do that for your own house or household. And then invest, after these things are in place, invest for the long range goals. Whatever it is that is important to you, retirement, kids' education, whatever it is that your goals are. And it doesn't have to be the huge thing. It could also be you want to take a big vacation to Europe and you want $10,000 to do that. Set that money aside periodically and get that done. So these are the 4-step plan. So where are you going to put your money? See, where are you going to put your money? Here's our financial planning pyramid. Might be a little hard to see. I gave you a chart of this. So we start at the very bottom. You need to protect against loss. That means insurance. So you need to have proper insurance to help you with it. You need automobile, house, life, in most cases, possible disability, medical insurance, and maybe liability insurance. I said life insurance possibly. That depends on your circumstance. If you're younger, if you have children, if you have debt, then you definitely need life insurance. If you're out of those things, you're older, you don't have any debts, you don't have any children to take care of if you die, your mortgage paid, all that kind of stuff, you may not need life insurance at all, okay? But you do need it when you're younger. And you need, we'll look at a little chart in a minute on how much you might need. The second tier here is your checking accounts, your savings bonds, CDs, that kind of stuff. This is where you should put your emergency money. Your emergency fund should be in these kinds of things. You could get checking insured savings accounts now that actually pay you some interest, and you could get those and help you with that a little bit. But these are things you can get to by writing a check or getting to very quickly, in case you needed it. The next up is money market accounts and mutual funds and so forth. The money market is also much like the savings, like the checking accounts or the savings accounts, but you should be making a little more money on those. Right now they're in the 4%, a little over 4% range. Then you move on up to mutual funds of different kinds, different stripes. The more you move up here, like growth fund mutual funds, those are more volatile, they're up and down more. As we go up this chart, these things have the potential of making more money for you, but also have the potential of losing money. So you have to be careful with some of that. Then you move into collectibles and commodities and stuff. We talked about all that. So most of us are in this, making sure you get insured properly. So don't take that risk. You know, if you got, you hear about these accidents all the time with cars, and half the people don't have insurance. That you need to have proper insurance, and you need to plan on that, and have all these other things as well. Okay, now 3 questions on life insurance. A lot of people would ask why do we need life insurance? Because if you die, you need to look carefully at your family. What kind of pickle would your family be in if you died right now? Well, what would happen to your family if you died? If you're older, probably nothing. Things will probably be fine. If you're younger and have children, well, the circumstances are going to be hard there. How much insurance do you need? That needs to be looked at carefully, and you need to sit down with the insurance sheets we gave you and determine how much you need. And if you buy term insurance, most people can buy that very cheaply and get a lot of insurance very quickly to hold over your family if you're gone. So you can get $1 million worth of insurance pretty cheaply if you're young and in good health. And it doesn't cost you that much. If you're dead, your family is taken care of. So you need to look at that. Okay, so that's the insurance part and the investment part. Questions, thoughts, things we need to talk about? Yeah. Colin?
Speaking of insurance,
Yeah.
what we see a lot today to insure your car against breakdowns. What do you think about that kind of insurance?
Well, normally those kind of warranty type things they're a good moneymaker for the company. For most people, they're not. You shouldn't probably do that. And of course, you'll be getting something in the mail once a week for the rest of your life that your warranty is about to expire. and you gotta pay, but usually, especially if you're buying something that's in good shape, you know, you're gonna pay more for the warranty than you are for the repair.
Well, I mean, protecting against, losing your transmission, a company like Endurance, I get those in the mail all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody does. I just throw them away.
Yeah, I think that's what
And you
most
see it
people
on
should do.
TV too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it looks great, you know,
Looks great, yeah.
yeah, my car broke down and they paid for the whole thing.
Yeah, $14,000 repair. Endurance, paid it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, one person out of a million, huh? You got that? Yeah. Yeah, most of those warranties too, for appliances and whatever else you're buying at the store, they're gonna offer you a warranty for almost everything you go in there for. You buy a $5 fan, they wanna give you a warranty, you know? So, those are usually really not very good idea. Bob?
Yeah, on that, car warranty, couldn't the person in his, emergency fund basically
Yeah,
be saving that and not be paying it down?
Yeah.
Because I would think that those, kind of companies, those would be pretty high premium.
yeah, you're exactly right. Put that money instead in your emergency fund. The transmission goes out, you got some money
You
saved.
gotta take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
That's right. Kim?
Anything on those car warranties, I think it's gonna be true, one I looked at, but it's probably true across the board, is you have to follow their maintenance schedule, and you
Yeah.
have to document it.
Yeah.
And if you miss one, warranty's no good.
That's right. Yeah, they got their tricks. Bob?
Or if the company changes names, you lose it too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, cause I did that with Honda,
Oh,
and I did, like Kim just said, I followed everything, all its oil changes, they did everything. But when it come time to actually claim on it, they acted like they didn't know what I was talking about.
huh.
And then they also, the company did change from one person to another. It happened to be the same family,
But
that
they were,
was enough.
and they were able to get around that, huh?
Yeah, so
Wow.
that's fine.
Yeah,
I just won't do it again.
yeah, don't do that, yeah. Wow. Okay.
It didn't cost me nothing, because I still had to get oil changes.
Yeah, but you had to
Just
pay for the,
fact that
you had to pay for the
I
repair.
had to pay for the repair, which
Yeah.
I did anyway.
Okay.
What about home warranties? I mean,
Yeah.
Anthony swears by them, for example.
Does he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's had a couple good lucks on
He's had
those.
some really good,
Yeah. I think he floods his house just to get those things to pay off.
if this is being recorded, strike that from the record.
Strike that from the record, Edwin. Yeah, yeah, he's had a couple of things and so, I don't know, has anybody else had any experiences with home warranties? Bob?
The only time I've ever purchased a home warranty is just for like the first year after, and it's never produced anything. It
Yeah.
was affordable at the time, $300 to $500 depending on the value of the home you're purchasing,
Yeah,
and that was for probably $125,000 home purchase.
oh,
So,
yeah,
generally, and it was a house we bought, it was the one we lived in Rochester, that
Mhm.
was foreclosure. It was empty for a while. I thought,
yeah,
we already knew it didn't have AC and it didn't have even central heat.
mm,
So we knew had things to do, but
right,
the property and the home itself seemed like it was still a good buy.
okay. So I think that might be wise, especially if you have a house that's older and you're not sure what condition it is, to buy a home warranty for the first year or whatever could work out, kind of like what you did. And, but if you're gonna keep a house for years, it's probably putting money down the place you don't wanna put it down. Yeah, okay. Other questions, thoughts about any of this stuff?
Do most people put their, I'm asking the room, I guess, their emergency fund in a money market? With money market actually returning something at this point? Or do they just put it in savings?
You could do either, but if the money market is giving you 4% and the savings is giving you 0 or 1, why not put it in a money market? And you can get it with the money market. You can get a checkbook if you want to as well, with most of these. So you can, it's just liquid money. You can get to it very quickly. And you might, for some of that, you might even have a little cash. I would recommend that you have some cash in a safe place at home in case something weird happened. The banks aren't open for a bit. Whatever, things weird have happened in time. So I'd recommend a little bit of money stuck away in a safe place for emergency. Yeah.
Something somebody told me once with keeping cash cash at home that never occurred to me is make sure that the cash you have isn't in big bills, have a lot of denominations, spread it out.
Yeah, so if you have
If
a,
the banks are closed and it's that kind of a situation, nobody's gonna want your fifties, they're gonna want ones and tens, and
okay. Yeah, I was thinking more like $1,000 bills and stuff, yeah.
not gonna
They
be
think they make those anymore, do they? Yeah.
$1,000 looks
Jim?
I know we talked about this a little bit, but I just think it's good to say it.
Uh-huh.
You probably don't owe a toll in Illinois if you got a text. That's a scam. When the antivirus comes up on your computer that says your virus is out of date, don't click that. That's typically scammers, right? If you meet someone online and all of a sudden they're interested in you sending them money,
Oh, boy.
it's a scam,
Yeah.
and don't fall for that. The government is not interested in Target gift cards ever, right? So these are, I know we laugh about it, but people do this daily to the tunes of $30,000 to $50,000 to $100,000, and they're built out of their
Yeah.
all their retirement. So, and none of us in here think it would ever happen to us, but just know they're really good, and you would never think that it would happen to you, but it does. It happens. every
Happens
day.
every day.
It
And you're,
happens to every generation as well.
yeah,
It's
Yes, and
young
smart.
people
Yeah,
on up.
we know a guy that, heard from Homeland Security, and there was, I don't know all the details, but he double-checked everything, really checked into it, and he thought it was real, and man, he lost $15,000.
Wow.
And, you know, it was as real as could be
Yep.
after he had done all the checking he did,
wow,
but it was fake,
yeah.
so.
It looks like it comes from legit company.
It does, yeah.
State Farm Insurance, you know, you get these things free gift, your road flare tip thing and all that stuff. If you go and click on the address that says State Farm, it gives the real address of the person, and you can tell it's from the United Kingdom or, you know, Africa or something, you know.
And grandparents, your grandkids probably not in a prison in Mexico and needing the $15,000 wired today. That's actually, a couple people in our church have been taken on that over the years. It's just, these scams are, and they're getting more sophisticated. I would suggest that if you get anything like that at all, that you don't just try to do it yourself. Take it to somebody that you can trust, that been through this. Some of these, probably the best person in our church is probably Dan Ohlweiler. That's what he does for the FBI. So he would be a good guy to check with. But definitely do not send hunks of money to anybody that you don't know. That's just, but yeah, it happens all the time. It's these frauds, yeah, Brian.
Also, just so you know, with AI, they're able to reproduce voices.
They can.
And I know a couple of people have gotten a call from supposedly their daughter or someone like that asking for money, and you got proof of life for the voice on the phone. And I don't know how you combat that other than knowing where your people are and being able to check with them real quick if they're actually.
Yeah, well, one thing you could do there, because that's a really good, because AI's going to get more sophisticated, is you don't do anything with that. Then you make a personal phone call to your kid or whoever, and do it, go around that. So, and they call them up and they say, yeah, I'm over here in Mexico in prison and I need some money. And then, okay, now that's, how'd you get your cell phone in prison, hon?
You probably deserve it, Steve.
When I was a
So
kid,
there's another option.
there was this scare about kids getting kidnapped, and so we had to come up with a code word for like if a straight, you know what I'm talking about? So you had to have a code word that only your family knew. I've heard that people are now doing that because of the AI stuff, because they can deep fake you,
Oh,
and both vocally and visually, right? So if there's, basically people are going back to using the old code word to try to establish, is this really my son or daughter or not? Or is this a scam? Like, what's the code word, bud? You know, that'd be,
I guess when you called and gave us that code word, we should have listened to you.
Yeah.
But, sorry about that. All right, anything else? We're about done here. So, okay, I hope this has been helpful. We're done with the class for now. You can go on our network and pick out some of these things if you want to and look at it. So hopefully that helps you. If you have any questions in other areas, be glad to help with you. Okay? All right, thanks.
Trying to